Hello, everyone. Good morning. Our cameras are still adjusting. It's early here on Mountain Time. But I'm Kyler Cheatham, joined by Adam Cheatham today. We're from the Confluential system architecture firm that focuses in heavy industry, anything from MES to ERP, the AI agents. So we're talking about AI agents specifically today and how those kind of fit into not only your business system strategy, but kind of your IT operations, and then most importantly, how to not get taken advantage of in this like everyone sells AI agents now type of community we're seeing in the startup industry. So if it's your first time here, this is a confidential live stream. If you came over from my TikTok lives, thank you so much. I'm so happy to have you here today. So I'm live on TikTok on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then we do kind of a greater live in more detail with our delivery team, usually Adam, kind of in this conversation. So today is all about AI agents, not about like, human synergy buzzwords, right? We're talking about like actually practically, how do you even think about implementing an AI agent? As we talked about last week, I came back from the Women in Manufacturing Summit, which I have my key findings on our newsletter, my newsletter this week. If you want to go read it, we can link it below. But one of the main things was people were like, we get it. Like, we know we need AI. We're done with like, these bigger innovative buzzwords. And tactically, like, what do you mean? Especially in manufacturing. That's why I love those conferences, because it's more people that are down for execution. So with that, that's kind of what we're getting in today. Some logistics before I finally let Adam introduce himself. But we can see any chat that you're joining on from today, any platform, whether it's Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, anything. We've got a variety of different channels connected. Ask your questions. And then also, this is still a relatively new technology. Add your insights, right? No two technology strategies are the same for businesses. So it's always extremely helpful to hear what's working for you. And we'll pull them up here kind of as we go through them. I know some of you are already telling us where you're tuned in from. So definitely let us know. We have a very cool global audience. So Adam, finally, happy Friday. Welcome. Please introduce yourself to our audience if they don't already know you.
Yes. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Adam Cheatham. I'm the CEO of the Confluential, and I'm super stoked to be talking about AI agents today for a number of reasons, right? Most of them being along the lines of somebody said I have to do this AI thing, so
Right.
I'm doing these things. But right, why and where, right? And how do we set this up? So a lot of the things that we'll talk about today have just as much to do with how do you make sure that you're using AI safely and appropriately, right? Everybody has these types of approaches to using it in one way or another that are sometimes effective, sometimes not, and the different purposes uh, yield different types of results. So, very excited to be talking about this today. Would love to be talking about not just practical applications, but governance and things like that. How do you
Mhm.
set yourself up for success? And how do you insulate yourself against failure in other scenarios, like
Mhm.
having your information on the internet for all to learn from? So,
Absolutely.
very excited about this today. If you guys have more questions throughout this, please feel free again to post them in the chat. We'll pick those up along the way. And if you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, let's just start. Let's just go, because this is a perfect kind of conversation. I think the big
Yeah,
thing that we learned is AI means something different to everyone in the organization, right? Depending on where you go, there's different definitions around it. So how do you define an AI agent in the context of enterprise software? And just as a reminder, there are many different types of AI agents. We are specifically focused usually in those predictive agents within manufacturing and things like that. Gen
yeah.
Gen AI agents, those aren't really our wheelhouse, but happy to answer questions about them too.
Well, and Gen AI agents have their place as well, right? Everybody has is starting to figure out, for example, how you have teams produce an AI summary of the meeting you were just in with tasks and follows, right? That's Gen AI. It's pretty handy, but that's not really anything other than summarizing, right? It's taking over some of the role of the project manager and enabling them to be more effective. But when we think about an AI agent in the context of enterprise software, what we're trying to do is take transactions that happen in software applications and enhance them. The same way, if I put in an enhanced process because I know it better than you do, the fact that I'm doing it means that you'll get higher quality out of it, whether it's order entry or translating to a purchase order or a work order or whatever that may be, right? Those types of things. And using AI agents in those spaces can be quite useful. They also, there are lots of things that I think cloud the perception of this, in that a lot of those are kind of more instruction based. How do I do this in this ERP? How do I do this in this HCM? How do I give my employees better access to ask questions? That's generative AI, in that the show me all of my purchase orders and what it is was my most highly purchased thing and what took the longest to procure from a lead time perspective. That's all generative and that's useful. But what we're talking about being able to do is use AI to actually inform better decisions. Take that purchasing conversation and say, what can I do better to order more quickly, and when should I place my next orders so that I can procure these things in time to meet the demand that is coming from the economic circumstances that my business operates in, right? That's a totally different question from an AI perspective. And I like the idea of playing with those agents more because they're thinking for me, right? They're trying to predictively say, we should expect these types of orders on this type of timeline, and therefore we need to order the materials to meet that demand in advance. It might be wrong. That's
Yeah.
true. It might hallucinate as well. But at the same time, can it be more right and more accurate than an individual human being? Well, of course. The idea of trying to pull in all of that information that um, is an instinct that's developed in a person over time. We talk about Jim on the shop floor, right? Well, you can't do it that way. Why? The system says I can, right? But the system is wrong in this particular nuanced scenario. And yes, Jim, why is that the case? And Jim says, because I can just smell it in the air. I don't know what it is. He just knows, right? Those are the types of things that we're trying to get through to for AI agent informed and AI driven execution as it pertains to AI agents in the context of enterprise software.
Mhm. Absolutely. And so that's complicated, right? Like, because obviously we cannot replicate Jim with an agent, but we can get pretty darn close to like understanding what that means with the collaboration with Jim, right?
Yeah,
We can use Jim as that data set. So I think when we look at how do you know where you could utilize agents, not just like, hey, I know I need these agents, the board's telling me this, the CIO is telling me this. Where do you start with looking like that, and maybe like lay it out like, can you buy agents from your enterprise provider? Can your cloud, hyperscaler sell it? Like, what does that look like?
there are lots of different ways of doing this, and I think that the most important part about the whole conversation is that all of the folks that are telling you that they've got thousands of AI agents. Most of those are generative, right? They're just searching a whole context of information that's written and data oriented and producing a summarized answer. We're talking about doing something better than that. We're talking about doing something bigger than that. And what I like about this, and we talked about this in the post that set this up, is the Catapult AI that we built. And very soon you guys will be able to play with this Catapult AI on your own. And what I like about it is that it creates a scenario where we can literally compare. And Avery's going to be probably blushing right now because I want to talk about her in it, but she did such a great job building it. And what I love about it is that every time she brings it up and demos it, she goes through this process of trying to perfect this distance, right? And the goal here is to represent a manufacturing process that requires a single target within a particular range. So we have a catapult, yeah, catapult that launches to hit a specific distance, not the farthest possible distance, but a specific optimum distance that we have decided it needs to be within a range of for our manufacturing optimization. Yeah. And Avery gets on and she pulls it up and she knows all the variables, right? She knows the launch trajectory, the cup height, the the angle, and all of these things, and she tinkers with them to try to get it within that given range. And she does this every day, right? But it still takes her a few tries to start hitting it for the first time. I hit that 190-meter range. We built a twin of this catapult so that we can launch it, launch it, launch it until we find that range. But it doesn't produce the same results every time, just like any regular catapult won't produce same results every time. So she hits that 190 mark once, and then the next try might miss again, even with the same exact parameters because of this standard deviation type of variance. So she has to continue making adjustments. 5 minutes later, Avery's got things tuned in, and she's much faster than 5 minutes. I'm over exaggerating. Avery's got this thing tuned in to now we are feeling like we can launch with some predictability. Yeah. And now I've launched it probably 10 times, and she's now within a range. It's been a few minutes, and now we're launching again. And now we're launching again. And then we're going to start monitoring it. Yeah. By the time she's done this 15 times, we're locked in, which is pretty good. Right? She does it every day. She knows it quite well. Just like your manufacturing folks know their machinery and how it behaves. And then we show the agent. And the agent is you click the button and it boom, it starts launching. And as it starts launching, it figures out inside of this digital twin what that what those optimum parameters are, and under the 15 tries that it took Avery to nail it, this catapult has it dialed in, not just once or twice within that, dialed into this is the right one within that standard deviation, and now we're launching, and this thing is going and going and going and going. And by the time we've taken the several minutes to launch it 15 times and get it dialed in, the automated catapult agent has launched it 100. And within a very narrow range of variability. And that, what I like about this isn't that Avery did such a great job with it because she did, but also that we can demonstrate how much more quickly an AI agent can learn and produce data than an individual person who even an individual person who built the agent. Right. So when we put it online, what I would encourage you guys to do, and this is going to be upcoming quite shortly, we got a couple of more steps to do this, so I don't know exactly what the timeline is going to be for it, but I would suspect by the end of March we'll have it up and going. I'd encourage you to play with it, tinker with it, see if you can beat the agent, right? And I think you'll find just by playing with it, and it's a catapult, right? Everybody knows what a catapult does. It launches stuff. See if you can beat it. And I promise you will beat you every time because it's designed not to cheat you out of an answer, but to do math in a space of fractions of seconds.
Mm-hmm.
The human brain does in fractions of seconds as well, sure, but not quite as many times as quite as quickly. And that's the value that an AI agent can bring. And then you can do things like say, do I want this thing controlling anything? Maybe not. Maybe I just want it telling me the answers through this digital twin type of replication, right? And now it says, all right, this is the optimum. It's run it. It's done all the digital twin analogies. It's run it 100 times, 500 times, however many times you want it to run. This is the optimum setting. And set it and let it run, right? Maybe you run it yourself, but the agent can tell you what those parameters are, or you can plug it into your catapult and you can have the agent run the catapult for you. So that's what I'm talking about when we say what can AI agents do, and it's I think it's pretty cool to be in a space where we're building these things.
Mm-hmm.
We're moving into not just one or two AIs, like a whole suite of them. And I think that that's going to be a ton of fun to really show in the market what we can do.
Absolutely. And I think like to the question here, what if Jim doesn't want to use AI? You would be surprised the gamification of things like this, how much that gets people involved, right? So I think that's always the question is people think that like these tenured operators are not going to want that type of new technology in their business. It's amazing what happens when you're like, hey, play with this, experiment
Mhm.
with it, not a directive of like, hey, you're going to use this. I don't care whether you like it or not. But
Yeah.
Jim, as much as a data set as he is just computing prouder. I guess Adam can do math in his head in seconds. I certainly cannot in any way, shape, or form. But that's really what this looks like. And I think the other interesting part about that, Adam, that I want to kind of pick up on the thread is it sounds like the catapult, right, can be a general agent. We're just using that as an example, right? But it's built for whatever the business wants to achieve with it.
Yes.
So I think it's a challenge in that the business doesn't know what it wants to achieve with agents that they don't understand. And that is kind of the core challenge. What would you say to that?
Um, I think that if our core challenge is adoption and what Jim knows and Jim doesn't want to do it and we're worried about Jim, I've I've talked to a lot of folks, even the biggest curmudgeons on the shop floor, and they really don't want to use software, right?
No.
They don't want to do it at all. I'm working with a guy who is literally owned and run and knows his ERP inside and out. He has become the expert in it, and he can't get out of it fast enough. He's been quite diligent in doing his best on making sure that it's replaced appropriately, but he doesn't want to be beholden to this technology. Jim doesn't want to be hamstrung by the fact that he has to use the same stinking piece of technology day in and day out. He wants to do real work. So when you tell Jim, "Hey, bud, we got this agent that's going to help you with these things so that you can focus on the real work," I'm willing to bet Jim is going to be on board with that. And
Mhm.
you got to prove it, right? He's seen technology come and go and really be a problem for business. But when you can prove it to him that it works, he's
Mhm.
going to be on board because it's going to let him do the real stuff,
Yeah.
and that's going to make a difference for him. Now, I want to poke at this other question here. If your company were founded today with AI agents at its core, what would you build differently, and what would you never build at all? Um, I think that I would, if we're starting a company today, and there are a couple of points on this. So I'm gonna take two angles from this question because I think that this is an interesting one to also reframe. One is if I'm building it today,
Mhm.
what would I use at my core, and what would I build differently? I would certainly have market analysis and stuff like that done from a generative AI perspective, right? Ask ChatGPT, this is my business, how do I compete well, blah 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 blah. But from a perspective of automating workflows, I would take all the things that the level of quality is easy to manage. Invoicing, for example. You know what your orders are. The invoice just needs to go out. Having it sent and automated and creating an invoice from an order, I would do that. And then I would plug in an AI agent for that would run it. I would also plug in AI agents for order entry and being able to enable somebody who's creating orders to understand the person that they're on the phone with
Mhm.
and say if they are into this, they are also likely into that. That's not as much AI as it sounds like because Amazon is doing this every day,
Mhm.
but it's a plugin, right? What you're trying to do is have AI in places where you can trust it to make decisions so that you can run your business. So from a perspective of if I were founding my business today, where would I do that? I would absolutely use it for automating decisions like that and making purchasing recommendations, right? Part of this is that as a nascent company, you find yourself in a little bit more of a risk oriented position to try to compete. And you need to leverage AI in order to allow you to compete more effectively by taking off the little things that are less risk oriented. Another angle that I think is important on this as well, which is something I'm talking to some other folks about and doing work for, is what about a business that I'm picking up in the middle, right? The easiest way of framing this is, what about a business? Well, let's say I just acquired a business. Where would I find my AI the most useful? And the way I would start with that is by running an evaluation of where are my pain points and where are the things that work well for me, um, and what are my strengths as well as it pertains to technology. And in doing this, what I like as an analogy is a fertile ground analogy, right? We could have the richest soil ever and
Hmm.
plant seed in it, and if I do that in a place where it never rains, it's not going to grow anything, right? On the flip side, I can find some place where it rains all the time, but the nutrients in the soil are trash. It's not going to, again, it's not going to grow. So I may find some place that we're middle of the road on both, but I'm getting enough nutrients and I'm getting enough rain that I've got something that I can grow. That fertile ground analogy. And in that, let's look for those spaces. And when we're looking at it from a business perspective, let's look at the areas where there's opportunity for improvement or pain points to be resolved. And we have the equipment or data or technology in place to connect the dots. And by that, I mean, if you have an entirely manual process where you're not capturing any information of it along the way, you had to pull that data in somewhere, right?
Hmm.
Let's say our let me think here. Let's say that we're running an organization where we're creating quotes on paper or in a spreadsheet, and as we do that, we're modifying them with a high degree of variability, and that variability is really nuanced. It's very engineered to order kind of vibe, and then we create an order from that. That might not be the best scenario for me to automate with technology unless I have enough data to be able to tell where the order is coming from and what it is we're looking for. But once that project is created or that product is created and we manufacture it, now creating an invoice or even creating a manufacturing order from a sales order, and all that work that goes from, I created this order to understand all of these things, and now I have to match it up with all of these minor details to create an order for production. That might be a better candidate for some place that I have enough data, I have a long process that could be improved. Now let's plug in an agent that can translate that and then start checking it, right? User acceptance testing is important in this. We don't want to court the idea that we're creating hallucinations in manufacturing work orders, especially in an engineer to order environment, right? So, how do we do this in a way that it's safe? How do we do this in a way where it's reliable? And that's an area that I would focus on for growing an organization's AI capability if they're already well established.
I think that that's a really interesting question for both established organizations and new types
Oh yeah,
of businesses that are just forming. We see that in like plant development. I am a judge for a lot of the AI grants for the state of Colorado. And one of the things that I see a lot is the questions about like, what would you do differently when it comes to fundamental software systems to support you? It's like, well, we got to solve those problems, right? But a
yeah,
lot of times we don't see them as problems because they're just inefficiencies that we've never kind of heard of before. So having someone come in, whether it's us or someone else or whatever, right? And just say, hey, you might consider all of these different things.
Yeah.
so that you kind of have a menu. It's kind of like going to the gym for the first time if you never worked out. You have a couple of, sessions where they just show you how to work the weights or the cardio equipment, all of those different things. So I think that is all good questions. Love the highs from YouTube. It's good to see. We're getting some questions over there. Thank you for the questions on on LinkedIn as well. I'm just gonna let you guys kind of run the show, and Adam can answer. No, I'll answer too. So this one from YouTube is a really good one about, you mentioned governance right at the beginning of this
Mhm.
conversation, right? The importance of understanding risk analysis and governance when it comes to implementing AI agents is a huge piece. So how would you ensure the AI agent makes autonomous decisions without compromising that human oversight? And maybe even give an example from the catapult, right?
Yeah. So, how to ensure the AI agent makes autonomous decisions without compromising human oversight is we test it and train it, right? Your AI agent in this question is essentially a new employee, right? Do you plug somebody in and say go and then never check in with them until 6 months later and see how it's going? No, you work with them along the way, right? So you start your AI agent with making autonomous decisions that are safe, and you provide that oversight. And as it learns, you start to relinquish a little bit of the control in this, right?
Mhm.
Now, some of this is important in that if there is zero room for error, and having a machine make an error is a catastrophic problem for you, then you shouldn't be automating that process, right? That should,
Mhm.
if it needs to be in the hands of a human being, leave it in the hands of a human being. However, things that don't need to be in the hands of a human being, especially if we can reduce an error rate by a significant amount, by an acceptable amount, and have an acceptable error rate, then you have a different scenario, right? My favorite thought process on this is the self driving car, right? Tesla.
Mhm.
And how many times have you read an article about a Tesla plowing into the back of a fire engine or something? That's a massive problem, right? Does that mean that Tesla shut down their whole self-driving campaign? No, it was a risk that they were that was calculated and saying their degree of error and the impact of that error is far lower than human beings by a rather significant margin, right? Because it is able to take in all of this information and make decisions in real time that minimize that. Does it make a mistake every now and again? Yes. Is your AI agent probably going to make a mistake every now and again? Yeah, that's why they call them hallucinations, right? That's just the word that we use for them. Think of that more as a mistake, right? So, how do you do this? You take areas where you have to have a mature, established, long tenured professional in a decision making process, and you keep them in it. And you take a process that can take more entry level work and make entry level errors, and you give it to an agent. That's how you do that. That's my thought process, at least. I'm curious what others think, that are listening in, and what you think.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is the danger of this mindset of thinking these types of things is, there is no autonomous decisions that your machine should be making without some level of oversight, right? And those, whether they're observation dashboards or whatever, are things that are regularly. And when I say regularly, I don't mean every month, right? I mean daily, many times a day, every hour, every, especially in
Mhm.
a complex manufacturing setting. I often hallucinate after a mistake, as do I. I'm hallucinating right now as we speak. But I think that's the challenge, is like thinking that this is some sort of magic. It's absolutely not. It's a tool that requires some sort of level of oversight. And a lot of that learning can start from just baseline automation. I think a calling automation agents is helpful for organizations that aren't as mature in the AI space, because it's just baseline automation, right?
Yeah.
That invoice is too high, right? It's over the threshold. We flagged it. That's it. right? And being able to practice, like, what is the next step
Yeah.
in that conversation? Would I go out and run a marathon tomorrow? No. Could I? I mean, honestly, probably not. I'd probably drop dead and die. But if I did, right, it would be ugly. It would be terrible. And it wouldn't have given me the opportunity if I knew I could run a mile today or 3 miles today. And I think that's the piece is people want to jump into this, like, drones running all over our manufacturing floor. It's like, those types of autonomous systems should be the most boring part of your organization. They're not exciting at all, right? They're task based automations. And so that's why I always say in our 4 types of AI agents, we talk about the automation agent, right? That's not an autonomous agent. That just starts with tasks, rule base, that gets you to that level of like, okay, what's the next one we can build on top of this? It
Yeah.
flags the invoice, right? Oh, okay, now we're going to trigger an email sent back to the accounts payable team or anything like that, right? That those types of different pieces. So I think that's
Yeah.
always, and you guys are right, keeping human in the loop. I love this one. This is so funny. I often hallucinate after a mistake.
Well, so and I think that at the end of the day, you start dealing with the difference between artificial intelligence and autonomous intelligence, right?
Mhm.
Autonomous intelligence is this holy grail that your organization runs itself, and you don't need any employees. It's just is all AI. And let's be honest, that's not realistic for hardly anybody, especially at scale, right? And at least not today. Maybe one day in our lifetime it'll get to that point, but it's autonomous intelligence is something that you're going to achieve in most cases in singular instances where you can trust something to make autonomous decisions and set it and forget it, right? I like this question: at what point does an AI agent become a digital employee rather than just a tool? And
Mhm.
my question for you in this would be: at what point is your employee different than a
Exactly.
tool of your business,
Yeah.
right? That's you could frame that the opposite way around. Every employee is a tool, right? They're a rather sophisticated tool. There are also an individual person, right? I'm not trying to diminish the value of them as individual human beings with the ability for rational moral judgment and those types of things. But at the end of the day, organizations hire employees as tools to serve purposes. And when we think about AI agents becoming a digital employee, I would say that the point that that happens is at the inception of the build. You should know if this AI agent is expected to become a digital employee rather than some type of investigative tool. Yeah. Like if I'm just trying to summarize my benefits and provide suggestions for employees on how it is they might make their 401k elections or this, that, or the other. This is not a digital employee. It's a
Yeah.
resource. It's a live encyclopedia, right? But if my purpose here is to provide suggestions and decisions on what the best thing to do in this scenario is, and when I'm building that, I should know that up front, and that's its purpose. And that's when it becomes a digital employee as opposed to just a tool.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that's such a complex question in the fact that digital employees are just a word. Like what does that mean to you and your organization? So the only reason I say that is not to be at all condescending, but not to let someone sell you a digital employee. Okay, that is not something that you need to buy because you think it's super fancy. Think about what the technology brings to the organization. You can call it whatever you want, right? That's something I see all the time when it comes to AI agents, digital employees, human fusion workforce, those types of things have become a new kind of money grab for a lot of different organizations to sell you tools. Just keep that grounded and knowing it can be whatever you want, right? But it's still going to be a tool that might give autonomous actions, right? Whether it's like Adam said, delivering employee benefits or something like that, that you go through being able to understand that that is a system of agents, but it's whatever you want it to be.
Well, I think that the this comment that AI agents eventually become capable of running most operational workflows autonomously is a very good one, right? So what part of your product portfolio becomes obsolete because AI agents can do that, and you think that you're gaining some level of quality by doing it as a human being. I don't know that there are a whole lot of industries that would take the idea of fewer errors as less valuable, right? Now, of course, there are the handmade things that people pay extra money for because they are touched by a human being, and there's a lot of value in that.
Mhm.
But that's at the end of the day, that's more of a sentiment than an actual value. The thought process that it's handmade, it infers that there is character provided through human error and
Mhm.
experience and and human variation. When we're automating workflows and operations and things like that, we are eliminating
Yeah.
variation. That's the
Yeah.
point. That's the
Yeah.
purpose, to make it as clean and repetitive and rinse and repeat and exactly as close to exactly the same every single time. And
Mhm.
that's where AI agents can really start to accelerate what we've done in the manufacturing space, in perfecting that. I think that at some point you start to, I mean, we talk about Six Sigma and those degrees of standard deviation, which are acceptable error rates in the Six Sigma type of methodology. I think AI is going to get that down to way more decimal points, beyond, or way more digits beyond the decimal point than Six Sigma does, because it is capable of
Mhm. Mhm.
that type of math and that type of calculation. That's where obsolescence come from folks who can't produce that
Exactly.
level of quantity and quality together.
I think like to the lean sigma approach, a lot of times that's helpful in kind of disarming what AI agents do is
Yeah.
attaching it to very process based those types of tasks, and people are like, oh, because that's something they're familiar with. I was just talking to one of our partners the other day that does specific finance for healthcare for hospitals. They usually specialize in like failing hospitals, like rural hospitals. They help them find money. But when they talk about like the importance of those lean processes and then how technology kind of complements those, that's a great way to introduce things like agents into your organizations, because it's less of like the red-eyed robots chasing me across the shop floor, right? It's much less disarming, and that's what we're going for. We don't need to start saying things like digital employees, right? Right? And I think that that's where we really get to that. And that's one of the baselines of just that next level of education of like tactically, what does AI mean? Like we get it, we hear you, we want the AI, right? So let's see, do you want this question from Lonnie here? You guys are just crushing it. I'm going to read it because it's kind of long. Okay. So my industry needs education on AI. The uneducated are crediting the slow 2025 to the rise of the machines, thinking people are on their way out. We know that's not true, but it's hard to argue with that being such a hot topic, especially in the media, and the evolution it's brought. It's exactly what I'm talking about. The rise of the digital employee freaks people out, right? For some I've seen, it's that they've found, I'm not going to say the G word on the internet because it will block us, but a pew pew with no idea how to handle it properly. Okay. And so that is that is absolutely a true thing. And it comes with the perception. It's interesting when we did our live last week, and I was talking about like my key findings or recommendations from the Women in Manufacturing conference. Immediately, I want them to rename their AI, right? Whether you're talking about it's Skynet, maybe not the best example, right? But then we have, all of these different areas of the organization that's utilizing this technology, and it's
Mhm.
not called AI because that's not something that is helpful with that perception. We have to kind of rebrand it for the organization and then show them quickly in a speed to value approach how well it's benefiting us. And
Yeah.
that's going to be a huge piece of that.
One, I'll tell a little story about growing up. And we were we moved around a bit, but this at this particular point in time, we're living in Northern Virginia, and guy is one of my best friends even today. I mean, we must have been in fourth grade or something like that. He lived two doors down from me, and we were starting to tinker with the idea of roaming, right, getting out and about. And we had this car, my dad's car, this 1974 MGB, which I own today.
Yeah,
Um,
it's right out here.
it's in the
Yeah.
driveway, right? Literally, I'm sitting right above it right now. And we're like, let's go driving around. It's like, okay, sure, let's do it. So we hop in this MG. We can't get it started. The idea for us, like we had no idea how to work a car, right? Like, what's a gas pedal? What's the brake? This is this is without considering that it's a manual transmission, right? We couldn't figure out how to start it, even, right? Well, you put your foot on the clutch and you push it all the way in. If we'd have figured that out, we'd have pull our foot right off the clutch and it would have stalled out anyway, right? So this conversation about education on AI is it's as simple as, well, it's the car just goes, right? Yeah, and then it stops and then it goes. No, the AI doesn't do that. It's not how that works. You have to know how to use it, where to use it, and what that looks and feels like. And I think that overall, when we start thinking about things like, the use of AI agents and how they're taking over these jobs and things like this, that, and the other. That's every organization that has trimmed their workforce to replace it with AI and done that as a one-to-one or many-to-one or one-to-many replacement of employees has failed at that. Every workforce that is plugged in AI as an enabler of their existing workforce has had quite a lot of success, right? This isn't about replacing people when people are on their way out. That's not how this is going to work. They
Yeah.
are assistants, they are helpers, and they are made just like anything else. I mean, for crying out loud, when the computer came along, it was going to replace
Yeah.
people as well, right? This when the internet came along, it was going to replace people.
Yeah.
All of the people are so afraid of being replaced by this little ego problem that we have that it becomes our first reaction to everything. Everything's going to replace us, and that's just not the way that that's going to go.
Absolutely. And I think even if it does replace some people in your organization, we're looking at replacing those manual bloated processes, and that's a reflection on you hired badly. Okay. That I mean, I think a lot of we can use Accenture as an excellent example of that in the fact that they, laid off thousands and thousands of people because they're now an AI and automation company. It's like, okay, well, what have you been doing for the last 20 years then? Right. Those are the types of headline grabbings that catch you, and those are what your people are then thinking in your organization when you bring in these new technology pieces that, oh, we're going to be laid off, and that's our livelihood. You have to understand what a vulnerable
Yeah.
piece of their entire lives that is. So I think that that's a good one. Let's go back to this one from YouTube. What's the hard limit preventing AI agents from operating fully autonomously in high stakes environments today? Is it reasoning, alignment, depth, or real time feedback loops? So I have some thoughts on this.
Yeah,
You
go
go.
for it.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go first. You do it.
Okay, so I think very few. I have no data behind this, but I would say less than 1% of enterprises have an IT maturity level that can handle autonomous agents on that level. I just don't think because of the absolute dinosaur Frankenstein overall business system architecture that you have in a large enterprise, can you utilize those types of I'm talking fully autonomous agents? And that's going to be the hard part. I think that's one part. And then I also think that if you're that big, that you have big software really holding you back from being able to integrate these things on top of them. And I just absolutely wish that more were there, but I think that's why I keep referencing what we talked about in the women in manufacturing, but the only, really good information I got from the Deloitte piece was their study around how businesses are spending their budget. And 93% are spending it on IT architecture instead of AI, because they spent a ton of money on AI last year and are like, oh damn, like I can't actually activate this in my organization because there's so many different levels of just the messiness I have under it that's not a strong foundation for it to work on. That's
Yeah.
my take. What's yours?
Um, my first answer is going to be safety, right? The biggest hard limiting factor on this is safety. Can we do this safely, right? You start talking about shop floor machinery and those types of things, and safety is an issue. People lose arms, fingers, lives in areas where human error becomes a problem, and that is a hard limit, right? And that's fine, that's okay. So the biggest hard limit preventing AI agents from operating fully autonomous in the most high stakes environments are where lives are at stake. So let's first start with that. Now, from a perspective of, let's assume that it's safe. Let's assume that we are thinking through this in a way where we have a clean strategy and we have a good governance structure and those types of things that are necessary for the foundation of an AI agent to function. And we start thinking, what are the constraints on how AI can operate? And I would say, I would agree with you on the cleanliness of data and the infrastructure for being able to use it. AI agents need enough data to do smart things and do them well. And if we don't have that information to feed it, it's going to make a big difference in its ability to provide any sense of reasoning, any sense of alignment with what it is you're trying to achieve, or anything like that. Real world feedback loops I would include in that data conversation, right? When I'm doing something as an agent and it's not going the way that I was expected to, how does that agent know that, right? Where is that feedback loop for that agent? So I would say, and that is a data and an infrastructure and architecture oriented challenge, and that's where I think that there is a lot of hard limits in being able to do this. That's at least my personal opinion. You got to be able to have the brain power to do it, and brain power from an AI perspective is data.
Absolutely. And I think as I'm, taking furious notes on this, I think data has a similar foundation of agents in this conversation of data is so misunderstood and kind of scary in the organization. And until you're ready to tackle that, then we're not ready to talk about agents, right? We don't have to boil the ocean, if you will. I've said that twice today. I need to go excuse myself and slap myself in the face. But when we look at those types of things, we need to take it one piece at a time and really know that
Yeah.
that's the currency to our organization and it's our biggest asset. Where is it? What does it look like? How is it passed? All of these different things, right? So,
Well, I will say though, what AI does do for you though is that it gets you to the point, in my opinion, where your data can be good enough, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. That's the point of an AI agent. It can tell the difference. Yeah, it can read data and say that this is an anomaly, and this is a piece that's missing. And I like that about this conversation. That this rush to have all of your data perfect is
yeah,
not necessarily what we're looking for. And frankly, you could probably train an AI agent to perfect it, right? You could do
yes,
that. That could be your route, and getting through this. It's the volume and the way that data can take on the law of averages, right? If I have enough information to make a statistically relevant and strong decision, that's what we're looking for. And the more perfect your data is, the lower the volume that you're going to need to be able to accomplish that, so that your agent doesn't have to figure out where those anomalies are. But if you have a sufficient volume of data, you should be able to have an agent that understands where those anomalies are and how to avoid them.
absolutely. And
I believe
again,
down the
it's
data.
we did. We did. You need
Did
more
I say
data.
that or did you?
right?
Right.
But again, you don't need to outsource that, my friends. Okay, you can bring in people to support. Like, hey, we don't have a master data management strategy. Like, we don't have any of this. Can you help us build it? We don't give away the keys to our business to some, fancy firms that's like, oh, I'll take care of that for you. No, like a partner firm could potentially help you with that. It's another area where I see a lot of businesses get locked into these contracts is because they think, somebody else can come in and manage their data. That's not at all how that works. So just want to do a reminder there. Let's let's not make a storm in a teacup. Wow, I've never heard that one before, but I love these. Uh,
That's an astronomy reference, isn't it?
I have no idea.
I think
I have
so.
zero
Or at
idea.
least-
Yeah, you're better at you're better behaved than I am. You have better consultants speak as well. So as always, in our last couple minutes here, we've had a lot of different conversations. These are all so good because, again, the technology strategy is as unique as your human DNA, right? It should be different for each organization. And that's why it's so critical to ask these questions about, like, where are we going to start? If you were a business today, you have AI investment, you have some automation on your shop floor, you're getting there. And all of a sudden, your board is like AI agents. We need a network of AI agents, which good for the board if they know it's an actual network. That's, I'm giving them too much credit there. But where do you start today? What are some things you can do after this call to make sure that you're at least setting the groundwork?
I would say that find where it is your opportunities are, right? Look for that fertile ground. Where do we have the tools to be able to pull this off and the opportunity for gains? And that's and in single use cases, right? So we're working on a rolling agent that rolls metal, and it rolls and then heat treats it. And then the idea here is that you roll it to a certain thickness and then you heat treat it to a certain temperature. And if I have an order for 500 plates of something and that order is going to need to be delivered on whatever date, what order should I do, should I roll and then heat treat and quench these plates in order to produce them as fast as possible? And in that, the challenge really is that the thinner the plate, the longer it takes to roll. The thicker the plate, the faster it rolls. However, the thinner the plate, the faster it heats. The thicker the plate, the slower it heats. So we have an inverse relationship here that we're working through a dynamic answer on. If I need 150 plates of varying gauges, how do I get that through the rolling line and through the heat treat, through the quench as fast as possible? And that's an optimization challenge that we're really having a ton of fun with, and that's another one of the agents that we'll have online when it's done. It's pretty close right now. It's a great proof of concept that I'm looking forward to showing off a bit when we get there. But another great answer on, we took a singular problem, which is this inverse relationship on optimized throughput, and said, how do we understand that problem? And how do we plug in an agent to do that? And that's what we're doing right now. It's super fun, and it's nice and contained. It's something that yeah, we could add more agents to it later. We could put an agent on the hotline. We could put an agent on the heat treat, and we could put an agent on the quench, and we could put an agent on the work in process management and all of this stuff. And maybe one day we will, but right now we're solving one problem at a time. And I think that one of the challenges that people have with AI agents in particular is getting narrow enough. I want to say your AI agent should solve as few problems as possible. And then when you have it solving more as many problems as it can handle, you know what you do?
What?
You bring on another one, right? You build another one, right? You have an employee who has a job, and when that employee is no longer able to handle all of the requirements of its one job, you add an employee to it, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So that's where we're headed with it. It's super fun. We're excited about it.
Absolutely. I think it's, the level at which it's innovative is incredibly exciting, but the more exciting piece to me is the level at which it's, so efficient and being able to help the people on the manufacturing floor that are already doing a really good job, right, to do a better job. And that,
Yeah.
to me, that is the definition of innovation, not, drones flying around your manufacturing floor or flying tractors or things like that. That's all very cool too. But the ability to make this happen and leverage it in your specific industry. And that's what I really want you guys to take from this conversation is, any old, Joe Schmo just selling baseline AI agents. Should you take the call and listen to them? Sure. Right. Like, it's always good to be able to like just understand. Adam's like, no, absolutely not. But I think that the difference in that is being able to know what you specifically need, not what somebody is trying to sell you. And that's the goal of kind of this pre-work, if you will, is finding those industry specific or business specific operations that can be enhanced with the use of agents that you own, right? Not somebody else owns for you in many different, and they host your data and they, take the keys to your business. So that's what we really want you to gain from this conversation. Any closing thoughts before I remind everyone about next week, Adam?
Well, I would just simply say that, there are organizations out there that will say things like, we'll take care of it for you. Right. That is, I highly, highly recommending this. One of my favorite recent moments talking to an organization, and we're talking about ERP, pulling this in, and they say, not only can we implement your ERP, but we can help you with your business operations as well. It says, we have all of this experience in your industry, and we're going to be able to do this, that, and the other for you, and we're going to be able to take these jobs over for you, so you don't have to do them. And the COO looked that guy dead in the face and said, I got 30 years of experience in those things. I don't want you doing them for me. Right? That is what you guys should be thinking about when you start thinking about hiring somebody, not somebody who's going to do your job for you, whether it's an agent or a partner, quote unquote,
Mhm.
but somebody who's going to help you do it better. And that's, gets back to what Lanny's saying, and a number of different other comments on this, where your agents should help you do things better, not necessarily do everything for you, because at the end of the day, it's about enabling people as opposed to replacing them. And that's always going to be the case. We're just looking to make all of our people more useful and more effective so that they can grow too.
That's amazing. Yeah. It's definitely an important conversation to stay grounded in, right? Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, thank you all for joining and thank you for sharing your insights. It's just as important as what we, say here. A lot of these questions are questions a lot of people have. So not even in this conversation, but watching the replays, you really did help by adding to that conversation. We're incredibly grateful for that. If you have additional questions, a lot of times we have these conversations, people are like, but I have this specific question about how to use it with a specific system. Totally cool. Just send us a DM and we'll get back to you, either Adam or myself. You can also reach us directly via email, adam@theconfluential.com, kyler@theconfluential.com as well. If you want to try the Catapult, by all means, let us know. As Adam said, we will have an opportunity for you to try it, but we're building that out at this point. But we can definitely show you a quick demo of how that works. We're happy to do that. So we are live every Friday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time to kind of, again, just unpack what we're seeing in the marketplace. These kind of taking the hype out of the conversation is our goal, to make sure that you're actually buying things that you're going to be able to utilize and get return from. So I really appreciate all of you joining us. Thank you, Adam, for sharing your amazing insights. Thank you to everyone in the comments. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend, my friends.